The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker and Clyde Chestnut Barrow were an American criminal couple who traveled the central United States with their gang during the Great Depression. Known for their bank robberies, although they preferred to rob small stores or rural gas stations, their exploits captured the attention of the American press and its readership during what is occasionally referred to as the Public Enemy era between 1931 and 1934. They are believed to have murdered at least 9 police officers and 4 civilians. They were killed in May 23, 1934 during an ambush by police near Gippsland, Louisiana. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born on October 1, 1910 in Rowena, Texas, the second of 3 children. Her father, Charles Robert Parker, was a bricklayer who died when Bonnie was 1 year old. Her widowed mother, Emma Cross Parker, moved her family back to her parents' home in Cement City, an industrial suburb in West Dallas, where she worked as a seamstress. As an adult, Bonnie wrote poems such as The Story of Suicide Sal and The Trail's End, the latter more commonly known as The Story of Bonnie and Clyde. In her second year in high school, Parker met Roy Thornton. The couple dropped out of school and married on September 25, 1926, 6 days before her 16th birthday. Their marriage was marred by his frequent absences and brushes with the law, and it proved to be short-lived. They never divorced, but their paths never crossed again after January 1929. She was still wearing his wedding ring when she died. Clyde Chestnut Barrow was born on March 24, 1909 into a poor farming family in Ellis County, Texas, southeast of Dallas. He was the 5th of 7 children of Henry Basil Barrow and Cummy Talitha Walker. The family moved to Dallas in the early 1920s as part of a migration pattern from rural areas to the city, where many settled in the urban slum of West Dallas. Barrow was first arrested in late 1926 at age 17 after running when police confronted him over a rental car that he had failed to return on time. His second arrest was with his brother Buck soon after for possession of stolen turkeys. Barrow had some legitimate jobs during 1927 through 1929, but he also cracked safes, robbed stores, and stole cars. He met 19-year-old Parker through a mutual friend in January 1930, and they spent much time together during the following weeks. Their romance was interrupted when Barrow was arrested and convicted of auto theft. Barrow was sent to East Ham Prison Farm in April 1930 at the age of 21. He escaped from the prison farm shortly after his incarceration using a weapon Parker smuggled to him. He was recaptured shortly after and sent back to prison. Barrow was repeatedly sexually assaulted while in prison, and he retaliated by attacking and killing his tormentor with a pipe, crushing his skull. This was his first killing. Another inmate, who was already serving a life sentence, claimed responsibility. In order to avoid hard labor in the fields, Barrow purposely had 2 of his toes chopped off by either him or another inmate in late January 1932. Because of this, he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. However, Barrow was set free 6 days after his intentional injury. Without his knowledge, Barrow's mother had successfully petitioned for his release. He was paroled on February 2, 1932 from East Ham as a hardened and bitter criminal. In his post-East Ham career, Barrow robbed grocery stores and gas stations at a rate far outpacing the 10 or so bank robberies attributed to him and the Barrow gang. His favorite weapon was the M1918 Browning automatic rifle, or the BAR. Several accounts describe Parker and Barrow's first meeting. The most credible states that they met on January 5, 1930 at the home of Barrow's friend Clarence Clay at 105 Herbert Street in the neighborhood of West Dallas. Barrow was 20 years old and Parker was 19. Parker was out of work and staying with a female friend to assist her during her recovery from a broken arm. Barrow dropped by the girl's house while Parker was in the kitchen making hot chocolate. Both were smitten immediately. Most historians believe that Parker joined Barrow because she had fallen in love with him. She remained his loyal companion as they carried out their many crimes and awaited the violent death that they viewed as inevitable. After 20 months in prison in 1930 to 32, he teamed up with Parker and the two began a crime spree that lasted 21 months. Often working with Confederates, including Barrow's brother Buck and Buck's wife Blanche, as well as Ray Hamilton and W.D. Jones, Bonnie and Clyde as they were popularly known, robbed gas stations, restaurants, and small-town banks. Their take never exceeded $1,500, chiefly in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Missouri. In addition to the automobile theft charge, Bonnie and Clyde were suspects in other crimes. At the time they were killed in 1934, they were believed to have committed 13 murders and several robberies and burglaries. Barrow, for example, was suspected of murdering 2 police officers at Joplin, Missouri, and kidnapping a man and a woman in rural Louisiana. He released them near Waldo, Texas. Numerous sightings followed linking this pair with bank robberies and automobile thefts. Clyde allegedly murdered a man at Hillsborough, Texas, committed robberies at Lufkin and Dallas, Texas, murdered one sheriff and wounded another at Stringtown, Oklahoma, kidnapped a deputy at Carlsbad, New Mexico, stole an automobile at Victoria, Texas, attempted to murder a deputy at Wharton, Texas, committed murder and robbery at Abilene and Sherman, Texas, committed murder at Dallas, Texas, abducted a sheriff and the chief of police at Wellington, Texas, and committed murder at Joplin and Columbia, Missouri. Ivan M. Buck Barrow, brother of Clyde, was released from the Texas State Prison on March 23, 1933, having been granted a full pardon by the governor. He quickly joined Clyde, bringing his wife Blanche, so the group now numbered 5 persons. This gang embarked upon a series of bold robberies, which made headlines across the country. Their goal was to collect enough money and firepower to launch a raid against Eastham Prison. They escaped capture in various encounters with the law. However, their activities made law enforcement's efforts to apprehend them even more intense. During a shootout with police in Iowa on July 29, 1933, Buck Barrow was fatally wounded and Blanche was captured. Jones, who was frequently mistaken for Pretty Boy Floyd, was captured in November 1933 in Houston, Texas by the sheriff's office. Bonnie and Clyde went on together. On July 30, Barrow was the getaway driver in a robbery in Hillsborough, during which store owner J.N. Butcher was shot and killed. Butcher's wife identified Barrow from police photographs as one of the shooters, although he had stayed outside in the car. On August 5, Barrow, Raymond Hamilton, and Ross Dyer were drinking moonshine at a country dance in Stringtown, Oklahoma, when Sheriff C.G. Maxwell and Deputy Eugene C. Moore approached them in the parking lot. Barrow and Hamilton opened fire, killing Moore and gravely wounding Maxwell. Moore was the first law officer that Barrow and his gang had killed. They eventually murdered 9. On October 11, they allegedly killed Howard Hall at his store during a robbery in Sherman, Texas, though some historians consider this unlikely. W.D. Jones had been a friend of Barrow's family since childhood. He joined Parker and Barrow on Christmas Eve 1932 at the age of 16, and the 3 left Dallas that night. The next day, Christmas Day, Jones and Barrow murdered Doyle Johnson, a young family man, while stealing his car in Temple. Barrow killed Tarrant County Deputy Malcolm Davis on January 6, 1933, when he, Parker, and Jones wandered into a police trap set for another criminal. The gang had murdered 5 people since April. The FBI, then called the Bureau of Investigation, became interested in Barrow and his paramour late in December 1932 through a singular bit of evidence. A Ford automobile, which had been stolen in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, was found abandoned near Jackson, Michigan in September of that year. At Pawhuska, it was learned another Ford car had been abandoned there which had been stolen in Illinois. A search of this car revealed that it had been occupied by a man and a woman, indicated by abandoned articles therein. In this car was found a prescription bottle, which led special agents to a drugstore in Nacogdoches, Texas, where investigation disclosed the woman for whom the prescription had been filled was Clyde Barrow's aunt. Further investigation revealed that the woman who obtained the prescription had been visited recently by Clyde Barrow, Bonnie Parker, and Clyde's brother, L.C. Barrow. It also was learned that these three were driving a Ford car, identified as the one stolen in Illinois. It was further shown that L.C. Barrow had secured the empty prescription bottle from a son of the woman who had originally obtained it. On May 20, 1933, the United States Commissioner at Dallas, Texas, issued a warrant against Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker, charging them with the interstate transportation from Dallas to Oklahoma of the automobile stolen in Illinois. The FBI then started its hunt for this elusive pair. During that year, Barrow and Parker engaged in several shootouts with police. On November 22, 1933, a trap was set by the Dallas, Texas sheriff and his deputies in an attempt to capture Bonnie and Clyde near Grand Prairie, Texas, but the couple escaped the officers' gunfire. They held up an attorney on the highway and took his car, which they abandoned at Miami, Oklahoma. On December 21, 1933, Bonnie and Clyde held up and robbed a citizen at Shreveport, Louisiana. On January 16, 1934, 5 prisoners, including Raymond Hamilton, who was serving sentences totaling more than 200 years, were liberated from the Eastham State Prison farm at Waldo, Texas by Clyde Barrow, accompanied by Bonnie Parker. 2 guards were shot by the escaping prisoners with automatic pistols, which had been previously concealed in a ditch by Barrow. As the prisoners ran, Barrow covered their retreat with bursts of machine gun fire. Among the escapees was Henry Methvin of Louisiana. On April 1, 1934, Barrow and Parker murdered 2 police officers in Grapevine, Texas, and 5 days later, they killed a police constable in Miami, Oklahoma, and kidnapped a police chief. The FBI had jurisdiction solely on the charge of transporting a stolen automobile, although the activities of the Bureau agents were vigorous and ceaseless. Every clue was followed, wanted notices, furnishing fingerprints, photograph, description, criminal record, and other data were distributed to all officers. The agents followed the trail through many states and into various haunts of the Barrow gang, particularly Louisiana. The association with Henry Methvin and the Methvin family of Louisiana was discovered by FBI agents, and they found that Bonnie and Clyde had been driving a car stolen in New Orleans. On April 13, 1934, an FBI agent, through investigation in the vicinity of Rushton, Louisiana, obtained information which definitely placed Bonnie and Clyde in a remote section southwest of that community. The home of the Methvins was not far away, and the agent learned of visits there by Bonnie and Clyde. Special agents in Texas had learned that Clyde and his companion had been traveling from Texas to Louisiana, sometimes accompanied by Henry Methvin. The FBI and local law enforcement authorities in Louisiana and Texas concentrated on apprehending Bonnie and Clyde, whom they strongly believed to be in the area. It was learned that Bonnie and Clyde, with some of the Methvins, had staged a party at Black Lake, Louisiana, on the night of May 21, 1934, and were due to return to the area 2 days later. Before dawn on May 23, 1934, a posse composed of police officers from Louisiana and Texas, including Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, concealed themselves in bushes along the highway near Salis, Louisiana. In the early daylight, Bonnie and Clyde appeared in an automobile, and when they attempted to drive away, the officers opened fire. Bonnie and Clyde were killed instantly. Hi, this is Twisted Mind. Quick question for you. Do you like reading romantic stories? If so, in the description box below is a link to an app called Dreame that features a writer under the pseudonym of Annabel Lee. Please click and follow her. Thank you. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twysted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!